Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Institute of Project Management in Ireland's first EMEA monthly webinar. We're thrilled to have you with us today as we kick off this exciting series designed to empower and elevate your project management skills. My name is Aita Ebude. I am the membership manager here at IPM. I want to extend a heartfelt thank you to each and every one of you joining us today. We know how valuable your time is, and we're truly honored to have you with us within the next 1 hour. Today marks the beginning of an exciting journey. This is the first in a series of webinars we'll host on the first Friday of every month. Each session will focus on different aspects of project management, offering valuable insights and strategies to help you thrive in your roles. We'll feature different speakers each month who will present on engaging and relevant topics. For today's session, we're delighted to have Nadej Minoir, a specialist in project management communication and a coach at Coaching Vision. Nadej helps project managers struggling with the complexities of their new roles by building communication strategies that gain stakeholder buy-in. Today, she'll present on the topic Communication in Project Management, the Game Changer. As we all know, communication is the backbone to every successful project, and mastering it can truly set you apart as a leader. Over the next hour, Nadej will give us strategies, techniques, and real-world examples that will transform how we approach communication within your projects. If you have any questions during the webinar, please drop them in the comment section. We'll have a Q&A at the end, and we'll do our best to answer all your questions. Once again, thank you for joining us today. And without further ado, please let's welcome Nadej, our speaker for today.
Thank you very much for this very nice introduction, Aita. It's a real pleasure to be here today with you and to kick off that webinar series. I'm very proud to be your first speaker in that new exciting event for IPM. And yes, today I'm going to talk about communication. And what I'll do is that I'll share my screen with you with the presentation. Okay, there it is. And there we go. So, yes, it's true that communication in project management is really a game changer and it's really going to influence how well or not your project is going. Okay? At the end, you'll probably deliver the project. But imagine if you could deliver a project very smoothly with good relationships with all your stakeholders and everybody being clear on whatever they need to do in the project. Wouldn't that be great? So in this webinar, I'll try to explain about communication and give you some examples and tips on how basically to try and communicate better within your project as mainly a project manager. But it's the same for anybody involved in a project. So who I am to be here in front of you talking about communication in project management. So I'm probably not the only one here to have come to project management via a rather indirect route. A lot of project managers, probably quite a few amongst you, will have a different professional background to begin with. And that was the case for me. I started as a scientist in biology. And so basically for 15 years, I did teaching and research in various universities and research institutes in different countries. And so basically during these 15 years, without kind of knowing it, well, I knew I was kind of doing it, but I was managing my research project. And usually a research project, they involve various teams in various countries. And so it's basically quite a good experience. And then after all these years, I realized that I liked that management aspect. So I decided to switch into formal project management. And I began managing IT projects. And I thought, I said, okay, I've managed research project, that should be okay. But then basically, I experienced quite a bit of overwhelm in this IT project because the stakeholders were a lot diverse. There were a lot more in a project than the usual number of people you would deal with in a research project. And so suddenly I felt that I wasn't on top of it. I wasn't in control of what was happening in the project and what I was supposed to do. And so basically, I sat down, I thought about it for a while, and then I realized that, okay, everything turns around communication skills. And so I recognize the importance of having good communication skills. And I knew that I had some from feedback that I had received as a scientist. And so basically, I went on a journey to learn more and harness the communication skills to adapt them to communicate better in my project. And basically, with that, I achieved a lot more success in project management. Okay, the atmosphere in the projects were much better. Basically, people were a lot happier working together, and it was going a lot more smoothly. And so, armed with that, I decided to become a consultant and a trainer to help other people doing that. And so now I consult internationally. And as Aita mentioned, I help project managers and their team basically set up proper communication for the project to deliver project more smoothly by having a better communication strategies on a daily basis. So that's for me. Now, why do we communicate in project management? And that's what we're going to look at in the first section of that talk, okay? The purpose of communication. And then I'll give you just two quick examples, two scenarios that can happen, just to make you think a little bit about communication in project. And then I'll discuss the different types, actually three main types of miscommunication in general, but particularly in projects as a project manager. And finally, I'll give you some tips on how to approach communications to communicate better in your projects. So let's begin. What is, or are, if I can say, the purposes of communication in project management? And here I'm going to talk about three different purposes of communication. And the first one, well, we know, okay, if you're a project manager, people who are watching us here, listening to us, you know that either the project manager or involved in a project, that there are a lot of communication going on in the project. And basically, the goal of that at the end is to get things done. Because let's not forget, a project is very tasks oriented, it's very result oriented, okay? In a project, you're here to deliver something by a certain date, with a certain budget, with a certain group of people, and so on. Okay, and basically, all these people, they have to deliver the project at the end. So the purpose of communication is to kind of have everybody to get things done and deliver the project at the end. So there's no way around it. Okay, a project is very tasks and results driven. And a lot of the communication in a project is about exchanging information for these tasks to be done, for these results to be achieved. So the purpose, another purpose, if I can say, of communication in project management is what I call kind of transactional communication. It's that basically that's that. It's to exchange pieces of information with the people in your project. Okay, so either you give information to people or you need information from other people in your project. And here, concrete examples, it's about what needs to be done, when, by whom, uh, information about the risks in a project, information about the budget, okay, your regular progress reports that you will write in a project. All that is about exchanging information in the project, and it's a very important purpose. But then there's another purpose that sometimes project managers just don't think about it because they think about the tasks, they think about the results they need to deliver. But actually, the communication in project management is also about building relationships. And why is that important? Well, because projects are run by people, and usually they are for people. Okay? And so basically, without people, without your project team, there's no project. The project will never be delivered. Okay? It's just an idea on a piece of paper. So actually, people are the most important aspect of your project. And a big part of your communication in the project should be about building relationships with your stakeholders. I'm not talking about becoming friends with your stakeholders, okay? But getting to know people as individuals, because then it will make the other types of communication, okay, the exchange of information and the getting things done information part of communication, it will make that a lot easier. So always remember these three purposes of communication. And so now, well, we know that communication anyway happens in a project, okay? But imagine these two different scenarios. Okay, so the first scenario, one morning, the project manager storms into the project team office and go to one of the project team member and say, "You were supposed to have done that by yesterday. I want it tomorrow. I don't care if you have to work on it the whole time, the whole night. Okay, just get it done tomorrow." And that poor team member had absolutely no chance to explain what happened, why it wasn't delivered. That team member was not even clear about the deadline on the task. And then later on, the same project manager had a message from one of the key suppliers on the project saying that they will not be able to deliver on time what they were supposed to deliver. And the project manager knew about it. The supplier had raised that possibility. But the project manager did not put it in the risk register, didn't inform the project sponsor. Nobody was aware of that in the project because the project manager didn't want to say about that, didn't want to bring that bad news to the project. Okay, so that's the first scenario, an example of things that can happen. And now you have a different project manager, again, in the same situation of having a tight deadline and having things done promptly. And that project manager interacts with the team and now every morning, how is it going? Is there anything I can do? How is the progress? What do you need to basically achieve the thing to be done by the deadline? And then the project manager receiving the same message from the supplier saying, okay, it's not going to be delivered on time. We cannot deliver you what we said we would deliver on time. Then the project manager had that as a risk in the risk register with a management plan for that risk, how to respond to that risk, and the project manager just implement that plan, inform whoever needs to be informed, and basically implement that plan. So now if you think about these two scenarios, which one do you think will give the best outcomes for the project? Okay, which one do you think people are more engaged with, more willing to be part of the project? Yes, of course, number two. Okay, that's obvious, because the way the second project manager communicates is obviously a lot more relatable, it's a lot more approachable, and it makes for a much better atmosphere and better control on the project. So here, what I want to emphasize on these two scenarios is that actually we recognize good communication when we see it. Okay, so you know that in that second example, it's a better way of communicating than in the first one. But the thing is that a lot of us, although we know it, we don't quite do it. So, what do we do instead? And now I'm going to talk about the types of miscommunication and what happens quite often in a project in terms of miscommunication. Okay, so there are three main types of miscommunication that happen quite a lot in the project, and you need to be aware of that and make sure that basically you try and avoid doing that. So the first type is a lack of communication. Have you ever met a project manager who's basically claims to be too busy to talk a lot with his team, to talk to the various stakeholders? You know, having the head on the plan and the head on writing the reports and preparing the reports and kind of not communicating. Or a project manager that doesn't want to communicate because, well, the project is not going all that well and they think it's not going to reflect well on them, on the project team, so they don't want to bring the bad news. And so basically, let's just keep quiet and it might go away and it might go better. So basically, a lot of projects are hindered by that lack of communication. And maybe if you reflect about how you behave, how you communicate, you may find that in some instances also you haven't given the information that you needed to give, or you haven't looked for the information from someone else. Okay, that there is this lack of communication. Then the second type of communication is too much communication. So the kind of scattergun approach. Okay. As a project manager, of course, you need to know a lot about the project. Okay, because you need to kind of manage, it's your job, manage what is happening in the project. So you know a lot about it. And sometimes as project managers, we tend to think that, well, people are as interested in the project as we are. And we're just going to give all that information way too much to everybody, kind of scattergun approach, and oh well, I'll tell you. And so we kind of basically overwhelm people with information about the project. And here again, that's not a particularly good approach because, well, first, people who, well, don't need to know, most people don't need to know everything. Okay, but basically people will get fed up with receiving all this information that is not for them. And the thing is that it will hide the important information for them, because basically there's too much, they will just stop reading and stop getting involved, getting engaged with the project. And the third type of miscommunication, which is a bit related to the too much communication, is irrelevant communication, which means that when a project manager doesn't say the correct thing to the correct person at the right time. Okay? And basically, good communication in project management, it's all about that. It's to say the relevant thing to the relevant people at the right time in the appropriate way. Okay? And so basically, if you send irrelevant communication, irrelevant information to people, you're going to lose them because I say, oh, what does it have to do with me? What is it for me? Or I don't understand that because they don't have the context and it's not relevant to them. And so again, you will lose and you will confuse people. And then they will again stop engaging. And when then you send them something relevant, basically, they're going to miss it because they kind of get the habit that, well, anyway, what is sent to me, it's not for me. So why should I look at what is sent, what people are telling me about the project, because it's irrelevant. So that the three types of miscommunication in a project. So be aware of them, look for them, either from you or from some stakeholders, okay? And basically try to correct that going forward to help communication with your project. And just something that will help with that in the first instance is that when we talk about communication, well, in any project, you should have a communication plan. Okay, so you need to reflect, to analyze what to communicate to whom and when. So you should have that, and when you have that and that you kind of stick to it, that will actually avoid a lot of these mistakes. Okay, but the difficult thing is to stick to it. So now, how do we communicate better in the project? And here I'm gonna present 4 different categories, okay, of what you can do to communicate better in a project, and more probably as a project manager. So first you have to plan. Okay, any communication you can plan it, prepare for it, because that's the key in communication, in good communication. It's to prepare it, rehearse some communication. Okay, so plan. The next thing will be about involve. Okay, communication is not a one-way street, so we'll see how to involve others in the communication. Then it's about valuing others' ideas, others' communication. Okay, it's not just a matter of involving them just for the sake of involving them. It's about valuing their contribution. And then finally, it's about following up on communication. And so now I'm going to go in a little bit more details about these 4 different aspects of better communication. And so the first aspect is about planning your communication, okay? Because as a project manager, because you manage the thing, you're responsible for the plan, you know what is going to happen when you've built a communication plan with the team. So you have already all this information, okay? So it means that you know in advance a lot of the communication that you are going to make in your project. Okay, and so as soon as you've got something that you know that is coming, you plan for it. So how do you plan the communication? Okay, so well, to plan the communication and not just, okay, we'll have a meeting on that day. and things like that. No, but plan also how you're going to communicate. Okay, so yes, you're going to have a meeting, but what are you going to say? How are you going to say it? Okay, that's the important thing. So to do that, you need to have a thorough stakeholder identification and analysis, because I already said that earlier, communication isn't one way. Okay, communication is two ways. You send information, you receive information, and basically you want your message to get across the way you intended it. This is good communication. This is when the message you send is understood the way you want it to be understood, and vice versa. Okay, that you understand the message that you receive the way that it was intended to be understood. And for that, well, you need to know who you're talking with. Okay, so you need to know how to address, how to communicate with each of your stakeholders, because each stakeholder will have different requirements, will have different expectations, will like to communicate in different ways. And so you need to be all aware of that. And that comes through first a thorough identification, make sure you know all your stakeholders, and a thorough analysis in terms of how do they like themselves to communicate. So you need to know whether someone would rather have a phone call, receive a phone call from you, would rather have an email, would rather have you to set up a meeting. So all that kind of things. And so once you've done that, you can put all that in a detailed communication plan. Okay? And that's where you have all the information. And then when you know that something is coming, again, you plan for that specific piece of information. What am I going to say? How am I going to say it? And of course, to be able to do that, you need to have the right tools in place, which means that in your project, you need also to plan for the tools you're going to use in your communication. Okay, and especially nowadays, where a lot of projects involve people who can be in different countries, okay, with different time zone, and not just people in different buildings, but basically, as soon as people are not together in the same room at the same time, you will need tools to communicate. And so that's also part of the planning of the communication. What tools are you going to use to communicate? And these tools will be different depending on your stakeholders. Okay? Because as I said, they will have preferences. So it doesn't mean that you have to use 15 different tools. Okay, because people will just get confused and lost. And how do you want people then to communicate within each other? So no, but you want to have basically a few tools that people use, and set in place the processes and the rules for using these tools in communication within the project. So that's about the planning. Okay, so now you've got things in place. So now you can communicate for real. Okay? And so now in that communication, as I said, it's not one way. Okay, I know I've said it a lot, but that's very, very important. Especially in project management, where I know as project manager, we tend to think that we are the ones communicating. Okay, so we tell people what to do. We send people reports. Okay, but no, our role as project managers is to bring everybody on board, every stakeholder on board in the project. And so it is two-way. And so a big part of communication in projects is to involve all these stakeholders. Okay, you may not need to involve everybody, but all the relevant stakeholders. Okay, you need to involve them in the project. Okay, you want them to contribute to your project. So you're not just sending information out, you're not just pushing information, but you want also to pull information from others. Okay, because when you get others' ideas, others' perspectives, others' experience, you will get a lot better results on your projects. Okay, because they will think about things that you haven't thought about. And so basically, it means that you will together devise ideas and processes and things that will help deliver the project better. So, how do you involve people in your projects? Well, workshops are a great way of involving people, getting people together, getting people to contribute, to share their ideas. Okay. And here it's workshops. So it's not meetings. Okay. Meetings also is a way of involving people, but meetings are usually more passive than workshops. Okay, workshops are a great way because actually you ask people to do something during the workshops and not just talking. Okay, they really do something and they really feel at the end of a workshop that they've really contributed something concrete and tangible to the project. Okay, so for instance, when it's time to gather requirements for the project, when it's time to identify risks for your project, when it's time to review things, to show to users what you've done on the project, for instance. Okay, these are good topics for workshops. And so you get people and they do something, not just talk about something. So that's a good way of involving people. Updates, of course. So yes, giving updates, but asking for updates, okay, to people is also a good way of involving them. Okay, just that they tell you what has been going on and things like that. So keep that communication channel open. And finally, the last example I'm going to give here about involving people is feedback and is to ask for feedback. Okay, ask people what they think about the project and things around the project. Okay, ask them for their feedback. And then we'll see also on the next slide, it's not just about asking for feedback, but of course taking that feedback into account. Because if you ask for feedback just to tick the box and say, oh, I've asked for feedback, but you don't do anything about it, okay, as it happens in many organizations, you've got these employee surveys and things like that, and but then basically it's just buried somewhere in a drawer or somewhere in someone's computer database or whatever, and it's never looked at again. No, so ask for feedback really, and then work on it and take it into account. So that's for the involve piece. Okay, so basically in that piece you want people to contribute as much as possible in your project. So you really have to interact with them to make them do things for the project, to interest them in the project. You really want them to be involved in the project, that they contribute to it. And this is about more receiving information. Okay, you ask them to give you information on whatever you need information about. So really involve people, involve your stakeholders, and not just your project team members, okay, but all the relevant stakeholders in the project. So then, yeah, that's good to involve people. That's very good. As a first step, you absolutely need to do that. But then what if you don't value their contribution? Well, no need to involve them. Okay? If you're going to ask them for ideas and things like that in a workshop and go and rubbish their ideas, they're not going to like it. They say, well, why should I contribute? Why do you involve me if you don't value what I bring to the project? So then to communicate better with people, you need to show that you value them. So how do you show that? Well, you ask them questions, okay? Because that shows your interest. Okay, so really you ask questions about whatever the project, about what you know what it is about, the information you need from them, but basically you ask them questions. You show that you value them by being interested in their point of view. So you want to get information from them. So you show them that you need them by saying, I need something from you. Ask them questions. But then, of course, it's not just asking questions for the sake of asking questions. Again, you listen to people, you listen to their answers, okay? You are present with the people when you communicate with them. Okay, you've probably all heard about active listening and things like that. Yes, okay. Basically, you're present, you really listen to what the person has to say, to the answer of your question. Okay, and you show that you listen. So it means that you can summarize what they say, make sure that you understand correctly what they say, check with them. Ask for any clarification if you think you haven't understood. So show that you have really listened to them, because when people feel listened to, they are much more likely to contribute and to be engaged. And then again, I told you about asking question, but it's not just you asking question. Okay, a big part of good communication is about being happy to receive questions. Okay, and I know a lot of us, we don't really like questions, because we feel that we might be judged, and oh my gosh, what will happen if I don't know the answer? And it's a big part, I think, of why a lot of people are scared about public speaking and giving presentations. It's of course giving the presentation itself, but also a big part is about answering these questions. What if I don't understand the question? What if I don't have the answer? Okay, well, that's fine. You don't understand, you ask the people to rephrase the question. You don't have the answer, you say, well, I don't know. Okay, there's no blame in not knowing. We don't know everything, we can't. So they say, well, I don't know, but I'll go look up for the answer and I'll come back to you. Oh yeah, that's interesting, I don't know, I haven't thought about that, let's look at that together. Okay, so basically that's okay. And so you need to welcome questions from your stakeholders. You've probably, if you've managed a few projects, you probably know that in every project, some stakeholders are just negative about the project, okay? Because we don't like change. We're not sure what's happening here, what's in it for us. So basically, they have a negative approach to the project. And that's absolutely genuine. You can't just dismiss that. And so you need to answer the concerns of these people. You need to listen to them. Okay, and you need to answer when they have questions. You need to answer their questions. You need to answer their concern. Why are they negative? Okay, and it's here too that it's very good to these people to ask questions. What would make them feel positive about the project? what would they do, okay, if they were in charge of the project. So answer the questions and their concerns. And then the last thing I want to touch upon on this value slide is, acknowledge people, okay? Acknowledge every contribution, even if you don't agree, okay? Some of them, well, some ideas, they may not be feasible or something like that. So even if you don't agree, acknowledge people's contribution, okay? Make them really feel that their contribution, whatever the contribution is, even if it's negative, the contribution is welcome because it adds something. It makes people think about the project and maybe find something better going forward for the project. So that's about value. And then we'll finish with the last piece about how to communicate better. And the last thing is follow up on the communication. Okay, we tend to think that, okay, we've told something to someone, we've sent an email, and that's it. Okay, that the person has got the message, the person has read the email, and that it's okay, they've understood and everything, and that's it. Okay, and we just take it for granted. And if we ask a question, we expect the answer, and just like that. A lot of the time, it's not like that. Okay, what you say, what you write might be clear for you. It may not be clear for the receiver of the information. So you really need to follow up on the communication. And there are several ways of following up. So, of course, the first one is just to say thank you to people. Thank you. It's a bit like the knowledge of the previous slides. Okay? You thank them for their contribution. You thank them for answering your question. And that, that takes 15 seconds. You receive an email, someone answered your email, you had a question, they send the answer. It takes 15 seconds to hit the reply button and to just say thank you, even if you go back to them afterwards with more information. But you acknowledge that, you follow up on that communication, you acknowledge their answer, their communication. So you thank people. Again, at the end of a meeting, at the end of a workshop, at the end of a call, you thank people for their contribution, for their time. Okay? Then you document the communication, what happened during the communication. Okay? You will have threads of emails with questions and answers and things to do. In a meeting, you will have taken decisions. There will be actions following the meetings and things like that. So you need to document all that, document what has happened in the communication, okay? And then dispatch that documentation as necessary. So you need to basically register here. And here, a good way of doing that, especially for the things that are very, very concrete, is to have logs and to register things in logs. So you can have a decision log, an action log, and things like that. And so in that log, you put everything that has happened, any decision that has been taken or needs to be taken, any action that needs to be taken, by whom and when, and you have all that documented. And then the last thing as a follow-up on this communication is you act on that. Okay? How many times have you seen decisions were taken in meetings, actions, say, oh yes, I'll do that, and things like that, and it was not documented, and nothing was done. Basically, people forget about it, and maybe 6 months later, say, oh yes, I remember. Oh yeah, I remember we had that discussion in that meeting. Oh yes, and basically nothing happened. As a project manager, remember purpose of communication to get things done. So you want to act on this communication, okay? So you want to make sure that the actions are done. You want to make sure that the decisions have been implemented. So you need to act on that and you need to follow up on that. So this is what I wanted to tell you about how you can communicate better in a project and the various types of miscommunication and that kind of things. So thank you very much. And now I'll stop sharing the presentation. And if you have any questions, so if you haven't done so yet, please put your question in the comments and Aita, so if we can go maybe through the questions together, if there are any questions.
Thank you so much, Nadesh, for that insightful presentation. For me, I've really learned a lot today, especially for a beginning project manager like myself. I think that I've really learned a lot and I have taken down some notes and some take homes today with me. So I'm just going through the comment section now and we haven't got any questions. I've just written there. Please make sure that you type any questions that you have for Nadesh and she'll be answering all your questions right now. So please just type them in the chats if you have any questions. Okay, so I'm just going through the charts to see if we missed anything. No questions. Thank you guys so much for joining. Thank you guys. I see all your comments. Delighted to be here. Okay. Well, we don't have any questions so far. We'll just give it a few more minutes.
Yeah,
Maybe people are still writing things down.
absolutely. And I'll take it is that I was very clear.
Exactly.
Not
Yeah.
that it is that people didn't understand a thing.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. What would be your advice, Nadesh, when there is a conflict in a team setting? How do you resolve conflict? What's the best way to communicate?
So the best way of communicating about a conflict as a project manager. So first, not taking side. Okay, even if you may have your own opinion and your own idea about it, you don't take side in the conflict. Okay, you're here to resolve it. So no judgment, no taking side. So that's the first thing. Then actually take time to understand the source of conflict. Okay, because it happens quite often that you think, the problem is, okay, yeah, people are discussing that, and so you think, okay, this is a conflict, and well, okay, yes, this is the situation now, and you want to solve that specific situation, but you need to take time and to discuss also to understand, if I can say, the root cause of the conflict, because it might actually come from something deeper. Okay, and so you need to understand that, and then to try and fix that deeper thing. Okay, it could be a problem with a process in, the way you do things. It could be a relationship problem between the people, if it occurs quite often, and things like that. So you really need to to try to find the real cause of the conflict. And then so try to get people together and basically to to present things try to present things in different ways and in ways that people haven't thought about, to make them think, to basically put them out of their own heads, if I can say, of their own way of thinking about that conflict, that situation. um, and an advice, if it really comes to be very confrontational and things like that, and that you see, well, if I put these people together in a room at the moment, I will go absolutely nowhere. Have them, talk to them really separately, and try to have that thing, and try to progress with each of the people individually before putting them in a room, if you think that it's going to be too much of a chaos. But basically, and not mostly not take side, and really find the root cause of the conflict.
Okay, thank you very much, Nadej. So we have a question from Saeed. He says, thank you so much. How often do we communicate in involving stakeholders during the project, or based on what we plan to communicate?
Yes, yeah. So if you look at some studies, it says that probably about 90% of the time of a project manager on the project is spent communicating. Okay? Because think about, when you send a report, you send an email. So everything, basically, almost everything you do, it's about communicating. But of course, it doesn't mean that you communicate with everybody all the time. And it's here that your communication plan, your communication management plan will be helpful. Because, for instance, of course, with your project team, you want to be in constant communication, almost. Basically, you work with them daily, and you almost communication. If they need something, they can, come to you, send a message, or whatever. So here, basically, you kind of communicate all the time. And then with the other stakeholders, and especially with the very relevant stakeholders, this is something that actually you can design with them. When I was saying analyze your stakeholders, well, go and ask them, okay, what would satisfy you in terms of communication on the project? Is it, I don't know, a weekly meeting, a report every other week? Ask them. And so basically, but again, all these very key relevant stakeholders, you need to keep in communication with them very regularly. And then you've got people that are still involved, they're still stakeholders, but obviously they will not need all that many updates on the project. So then you can communicate just once in a while with them, maybe once a month or once every 2 months, depending on the length of the project. But basically, this is something that you need to work on when you set up your communication plan. And the more involved the people are in the project, the more you want to communicate with them. That's basically the short rule about it.
Okay, thank you very much. We have another question from Peter. He says, how important is communication for project managers in relating with the support service providers in a project?
Um, it is very important. Okay, so basically, it is very important because well, they're here. There's a support. They're here to help. They're here, and if they're really support services for for your project, and basically they will be here to help when there's a problem. So you need to communicate. It's important to communicate with them, And so if they have any requirements, basically how they want to be communicated to, just follow these requirements. But basically communicate, and these are the kind of stakeholders where you definitely will want to try and build some relationships also too. Okay. Because you've got this kind of support things, so they're really here to help the project. If I can say, you want to be in good terms with them, so it's important. So in short, it is important to communicate with them.
Thank you. We have another question from Shahina. She says, with respect to the last part, please could you elaborate about the action part of the follow up? Thank you.
Yeah. So actions will be things like reminding people. Okay. So if they have actions to do, to kind of, well, remind them. I'm not saying, I'm not saying rudely, but just, you know, checking in with them. How is it going? We discussed about that in this meeting. That's an action that is in the action log. You said you would do. How is it going? Is there any obstacles? Is there anything I can help with? So basically, you go back to people if you haven't heard from them, and that the deadline for basically doing this action is there again decisions, basically follow up with the relevant people on basic, oh, has the decision been implemented, is there any obstacles, and so it's more acting in that way. It's not acting in the way that you are the one to implement the decision, you are the one to take the action. Okay, it might be that some actions are on you as a project manager, but this is more the way of acting in terms of, keep on communicating with people about that subject.
Okay. Thank you. So we have another question from Brian. He says, thank you for the insightful presentation. To what extent should the stakeholders slash functional team be receptive to your communication? And what if they claim your communication is not clear or appropriate or relevant when there is evidence that it is clear, it is appropriate, it is relevant? How do you manage that as a project manager? What do you do?
uh, well, I would say, if they claim, don't dismiss your claim, don't dismiss their claim. Okay, if they say it's not clear, it's not relevant, then ask them, okay, just what is not clear, please, can you tell me, how can I make it clearer? What kind of information do you think was irrelevant in what I sent you? What would you like to know instead? So basically, you bring that back to them and you ask them, okay, and then whatever they say, you document that to say, okay, this is what you said, so from now on, this is what I'm going to do, let's follow up on that, and so implement that. Because the trouble with communication is that, things like clarity, it's very subjective. Like when we say something, when we do something, you know what I'm saying to you right now, it's clear to me because I know what I'm saying, what I want to say, and obviously it's clear. It doesn't mean that it is clear to you. Okay, so things like clarity is very is very subjective. Things like relevance, so that basically that will come when you think about the stakeholders, when you identify, analyze them, and work on your communication plan, really thinking about what is their role in the project, what is it for them, and really define what they need to know. But of course, it doesn't mean that you have all the answers. So go ask them, especially if they say it is irrelevant. You go ask them. And again, about appropriate, is it appropriate or not? Ask them. So what was inappropriate in my communication? Uh, I didn't mean to be inappropriate. What was inappropriate? How can I make it more appropriate for you? So basically, just ask them, and usually that's the best way of diffusing and not going the other way and say no, it's relevant, no, it's clear, and just try to convince them. Okay, you have that conversation, ask for their point of view, and have that conversation and see how you go forward.
Okay, thank you, Nadej, for that. So the last question that we have is, how do you maintain effective communication in a remote or virtual project team environment?
Yeah, so here it's about basically efficient use of tools. Definitely, you need tools. So, well, basically, one thing is that also you're the project manager, you're responsible for it, for the communication. You need to put together with your team, with that remote team, what will be the rules, okay? What they will be comfortable with, what they will think is efficient for them as a team to work. Okay, don't impose rules saying we're going to use that, and we're going to have a meeting. So basically, that's to set up the rules together, whatever the rules are. General rules is that it's important to keep in touch. Okay, you might be remote, you might be in different buildings, cities, countries. You might be remote, but you need to feel that you can be in touch very quickly. Okay, well, sometimes, of course, with time differences, it has to be asynchronous, but to feel that people can get in touch quickly. So things like online chat or things like that, you know. So that's a good way to feel that people, even if they're not together, they're not, as we say, out of sight, out of mind. That basically, no, that's not the case. But basically, the best thing is to set up the rules together as a team, because different things will work with for different people.
Okay, thank you so much, Nadej. There are no more questions in the comment section. So, yeah, I guess we've come to the end of this webinar. So, on behalf of the Institute of Project Management, I'd like to extend a sincere thank you to all of you for attending today's webinar. Your engagement and participation have made this session a success, and we hope you found the insights shared today valuable for your project management journey. So, to continue building on this momentum, we're excited to announce that we will soon be launching our brand new membership platform. This platform will be a dynamic and interactive space specifically designed for project managers like you, where you can connect, you can share, you can learn, and then you can also have access to exclusive resources that will help you to grow in your career. So, if you would like to be the first to join this community, I'll leave a link in the comment section where you can sign up to our waiting list. And we can't wait to welcome you and to help you to thrive as part of our network. So, once again, thank you so much for being with us today. And we look forward to seeing you on our next webinar, which is coming up on the 4th of October. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, and thank you, Aita, for having me.
You're welcome.